Welcome back, Commander.
The course of human history was forever altered in 1995 by two seemingly innocuous and unrelated events. The first was the impact of a small meteor near the river Tiber in Italy. The second was the formation of a limited peacekeeping force to operate under the mandate of the United Nations. What few could have predicted was that by the latter decades of the 21st century, an alien substance present within the Tiber meteor would have spread unchecked across the globe, threatening environmental catastrophe and the extinction of humanity. Fewer still could have realized that this crisis would precipitate transforming the United Nations Global Defense Initiative from a minor military formation to mankind's first world government. Founded by the member nations of the G7 with the support of Russia, India, Australia, and Brazil, the Global Defense Initiative was intended to encourage mutual cooperation and ease rivalries left over from the Cold War. Major holdouts included the People's Republic of China and portions of the Balkans and Middle East, which had instead fallen under the influence of a quasi-terrorist organization and supranational entity known as the Brotherhood of Nod. Reducing the international influence of Nod, and in particular, countering its destabilizing efforts in the Third World, would be a major focus of the nascent GDI. The earliest GDI personnel, therefore, constituted special forces drawn from previously classified units, notably Special Operations Group Echo and Black Ops 9. As the impact crater of the Tiber meteor was investigated, the extraordinary properties of an alien substance it carried that would become known as Tiberium was slowly understood. Its uncontrollable spread across every region on Earth and the immense mineral wealth it generated was of great concern to the United Nations. On their order, the GDI moved to secure every Tiberium reserve to prevent its proliferation by Nod or other terrorist organizations. The global competition for Tiberium between the GDI and Nod quickly escalated into the First Tiberium War. In campaigns across Africa and Southeast Europe, the two sides engaged each other directly, and the GDI's capabilities and responsibilities were regularly broadened to meet the demands of the escalating conflict. After 3 years of fighting and numerous public relations disasters engineered by Nod, the Global Defense Initiative ultimately achieved victory, seemingly killing Nod's mysterious leader, a man known only as Kane, during the Battle of Sarajevo. With the Brotherhood fractured and GDI agents controlling many of its splinter organizations, the attention of the United Nations turned again towards Tiberium, which had spread uncontrollably during the war. Earth's natural biosphere was slowly being transformed by the substance, with entire regions now unrecognizable following contamination by even trace amounts of Tiberium. Preoccupied with this looming ecological disaster, the Global Defense Initiative was unprepared when resurgent Nod forces, reunited following the reappearance of Kane, launched a vast offensive against GDI positions worldwide. The Second Tiberium War would be a repeat of the first, with Nod again defeated and Kane seemingly killed, but at the cost of further Tiberium contamination and the continued deterioration of Earth's environment. Worse still was information obtained during the war, which seemed to indicate that Tiberium had been directed to Earth deliberately by some outside, extraterrestrial power. By the mid-21st century, Earth had been divided into 3 distinct zones indicating their level of Tiberium contamination and ecological damage. Ranked in severity from blue, yellow, and red, these zones redefined world economic, industrial, military, and political power. Traditional nation-states buckled and collapsed under the immense societal pressure exerted by the spread of Tiberium, forcing the Global Defense Initiative to assume more and more authority, becoming a de facto worldwide superstate by 2047. The Third Tiberium War began that same year, sparked by a nuclear attack on the space station Philadelphia, which served as the GDI's capital and the headquarters of its military command structure. Forced by slashed budgets to reduce its conventional military forces in the preceding years, the GDI was initially overwhelmed and reliant on its orbiting ion cannons to hold back Nod's advance. During one ion cannon strike on rebuilt Nod facilities in Sarajevo, the GDI inadvertently ignited a vast store of liquid Tiberium, clandestinely stored beneath the city by Kane. The resultant explosion decimated large swaths of Eastern Europe and attracted the attention of the alien Skrin, believed to have originally seeded Earth with Tiberium half a century earlier. While possessing highly advanced technology, the Skrin were seemingly unprepared for such fierce resistance on Earth. Despite tremendous losses and the continued machinations of Kane, both the extraterrestrial invaders and the Brotherhood of Nod were defeated, driven off-world and underground respectively. Despite its victories in the Tiberium Wars, the campaigns against Nod and the Skrin had exhausted the GDI's ability to reverse the worst effects of Tiberium. The conflict had only served to further provoke the spread of the extraterrestrial substance and hasten its effects on both Earth and mankind. In 2062, the extinction of humanity was estimated to occur in no more than a decade, as even the Blue Zones, the last centers of civilization, were gradually overtaken by Tiberium. Driven to desperation, the leaders of the Global Defense Initiative agreed to the unthinkable, an alliance with Kane and the Brotherhood of Nod to construct a worldwide Tiberium control network. Once completed, it was believed this network would not only stop the further spread of Tiberium, but safely refine the deposits already on Earth into a source of limitless energy. Divisions within both GDI and Nod would threaten to disrupt the project before its completion and cast both sides into a civil war. But despite these efforts, the network was completed and activated in 2077. Kane and his followers vanished, while all across the Earth, Tiberium deposits receded, Blue Zones were restored, and the Global Defense Initiative left as the sole planetary superpower on Earth. The GDI's unlikely evolution across its history means the organization has existed in a variety of different forms. When it was first established on October 12, 1995, it was limited to a single combined arms battle group operating under the authority of the United Nations and led by a single brigadier general. By the end of the First Tiberium War, it had become something more akin to a unified worldwide military, completely absorbing the former national armed forces it was initially intended only to support. The continued degradation of Earth's environment and the collapse of the international system forced the United Nations to repeatedly expand the GDI's mandate until it had achieved the political, economic, scientific, and military unification of Earth's nations. In this form, the GDI had transitioned from a multinational task force to an emergency military government. Military institutions were merged with UN divisions to form a provisional executive branch, headed first by the United Nations Security Council, and later by a council of directors once the last remnants of the UN were dissolved. While outwardly dedicated to protecting the civil liberties and political freedom of its citizens, the GDI was forced by the Tiberium crisis to operate without an established legislative branch or standardized judicial system. Instead, the organization relied upon a unique form of martial law, with local military commanders granted the authority to make both military and political decisions. Highly militarized, the Global Defense Initiative embraces a doctrine focused on technological sophistication, overwhelming force projection, and a combined arms approach. Through the use of heavy tanks and mechanized walkers, GDI forces can break through enemy formations while supported in the air by the legendary Orca series VTOL aircraft. The pinnacle of GDI military technology is the ion cannon, a space-based weapon of mass destruction capable of destroying targets with pinpoint accuracy. As Skrin technology has been reverse-engineered, the Global Defense Initiative has increasingly deployed stratospheric aircraft, the first step in what will likely become an orbital navy. Through the triumphs of its military forces has come the opportunity to finally restore the liberty and freedom that the GDI fought so hard to defend. The energy provided by the Tiberium control network and the disappearance of Cain has the potential to propel mankind into a new golden age, one that takes it beyond the confines of Earth and into a waiting galaxy. But the GDI has learned at great cost never to fall into complacency. Cain may have vanished, but he has done so many times before only to reappear once again. The Skrin's plans for Earth may have been defeated, but who can promise they are not still out there, waiting for another chance to strike? There remains the possibility that Earth was but a single target amongst countless billions, and that when the Global Defense Initiative takes its first tentative steps into the wider galaxy, it will find nothing but decimated worlds, seeded with Tiberium by the Skrin or others, awaiting those with the will and power to command and conquer.
Attention Institute personnel. We hope you've enjoyed our first episode back and the new voice of the Institute. To celebrate our long overdue return, I'm going to be streaming Command & Conquer Remastered right now. If you'd like to join in on the action, head over to our Twitch channel. And if you're watching this in the far future after Tiberium has ravaged the planet, you can rewatch the stream over on the Templin Archives channel. You'll find links to both in the description.